Hello, everybody. I have here with us today Kyra Knox. Kyra, how are you?
I'm doing well, a little tired. Production has been kicking my bottom, but I'm here and I'm awake and I'm ready. So excited to
I
chat with you.
Thank you. I'm so happy to have you here. And I was just telling you before we started recording how grateful I am that you squeeze this in because you do have a whole lot going on right now and a lot of good stuff. So that's what we're here to talk about.
Yes.
So you are an award-winning impact producer and director. And I read that your love and passion for the arts started at the young age of 6 when your journey began as a student at Freedom Theater. Can you tell us more about what sparked your passion back then?
So back then I didn't even know I had a passion for it. I was just always in trouble because I had so much energy.
Uh,
And I was always talking. So my grandfather, he decided to put me into Freedom Theater, to just teach me discipline and to figure out how to contain all this energy. And once I touched the stage of Freedom Theater, it was like everything made sense for me. And I was only 6 years old. And it was just so cool to be around all of these other creative, like young kids. And our group was called the Sammy Davis Jr. group. And just being around all of that positive energy and having something to do every single day because it was summer camp for us, summer theater camp. And that's really where it started, 6 years old.
I love that. And I think there's so much power in, you know, teaching kids to use their energy in that way. I mean, I've seen it even just with my own kids with sports, like, just funneling that energy or into something creative. It's awesome that you were led to do that at such a young age and that you enjoyed it. So,
Mhm.
your social impact work has been recognized with 2 Silver Tellys Awards for In the Know with Verizon Media. And you also won a Gold Addy and Mosaic Award for your work with the Philadelphia Eagles, producing a PSA to bring awareness to gun violence here in Philadelphia. When would you say your passion for social impact first began to surface, and how did it lead you to these powerful projects?
I would say so. I'm 38 now. I'll be 39 in April. And the reason why I'm saying my age is because when I was 34, I actually quit my corporate job to follow my dreams of being a producer and a director. And so I got hired at a production company to be their actor. And when, I was supposed to be resting, I would go to the crew and I say, hey, how, like, can I help you guys out? And so when we wrapped, the CEO actually asked me what I was into. And I said, well, I just quit my job because I want to be a producer. And so he was like, well, do you want to work here one day a week as a runner? So I was like, yes, And the reason why I gave you that background is because they started getting all of these series to do from Watching and Know, which is now Watching and Know by Yahoo, but back then it was by Verizon Media. And they asked me if I could cast these docu-series, and I had no idea how to cast, but I said, okay, and,
I'll
and
give
I
it a
started,
try.
right, I'm like, okay. And so I started using my social media and started finding these stories, and the stories that I was finding, it was, underdog stories, people that didn't have millions of followers. There's people that only had maybe 400 or 500 followers, but the stories was what was really capturing me. And that production company started getting bigger jobs, so they were like, well, Kyra, since you're already casting and talking to these people, and Verizon really love these stories that you're finding, why don't you just produce them? And again, I'm like, what does a producer do? Okay, like, I'll do it. And so now I'm on set and I'm actually listening to these stories. And eventually I started interviewing, these people. And it was just something that sparked something inside of me. And that first series was Good People, because we followed 10 stories. And just to see the impact that they were having on their community was huge. Like, even one person, that I found right in Chicago, she had opened up a hair salon that taught biracial families how to do Black girls' hair. something like that. It was just like, wow, just those interesting stories. It just sparked something inside of me. So,
I love that backstory. And it's
oh.
absolutely not what I was expecting you to say. I mean, that's just so cool that that's how it all came to be. And that, I mean, that you quit your job and we're just like, I know that I want to do this, even though I don't know how to do it. And I don't
Yeah.
know where to even start. Although you knew to at least go get yourself involved in a production and at some level.
Yeah.
But then that it just like everything started to, I guess it was clear that like your passion for what you were doing was leading you to the next crumb along the way. And
Yeah.
that's just really cool, especially now knowing everything that it's turned into for you.
Yeah.
I love that backstory. So thank you for sharing that.
No, you're welcome. And I tell, because it's only been 4 years, right?
Yeah.
Since I've been in production. And I tell people, I think it happened so easy for me because I started walking in my purpose.
Yes.
And I think that's why everything just clicked into place for me.
That just gave me the chills when you said that, because I think that very much so that's my own path has been, letting your passion lead you, finding your purpose, and then just trusting that you're going to be led to where you're supposed to be and how you're supposed to use your own unique gifts and talents if you really lock into what that purpose is. And I think that's just so cool. So now I really want to hear, especially knowing that you've only been doing this for 4 years, I want to hear about this incredible project that you most recently completed. So your first feature-length documentary film, let's just have a round of applause for that, because I know that
Thank
that's
you.
so hard to pull off.
Girl.
It is so hard. So and really, having done it twice now, I have so much respect for what you've just walked through. But it's titled Bad Things Happen in Philadelphia. So can you tell us how that idea first came to be?
Yes. So actually I started working on a smaller project pre-COVID with my cousin Gary, who is the founder of Shoe Basketball's Not People, and he's featured in the trailer. Started working on a smaller project with him, and listening to the stories of the teams really got me, and I was like, wow, you always hear from the adults how they feel about gun violence, but you never hear from the teenagers. How are they dealing with this, And it sparked something in me. And then COVID happens, right? And I'm like, man, why did I doubt myself? I should have just went ahead and did it. I shouldn't have said I don't have enough experience. I should have just done it. So I said to myself, if everything opens back up again, because remember, everything was just shut down. The industry was shut down. None of us was working. I was like, if the world opens up again, I'm just going to just go for it and just do it. And that's what I did. I hit up all my friends that work in the industry as well, told them about my idea. I didn't have a dime in my pocket. But because we already had such a great relationship on projects that, we got paid for, and because they believed in what I was doing, the mission, they were just like, come on, let's just rock out. Let's start filming this thing. And that's really how it started. And when people ask me how I got the title Bad Things Happen in Philadelphia, it's because Donald Trump had said that bad things happen in Philadelphia. And we were so pissed. Like Philly, we took that personal. And so I decided to take that title and in my doc also show the good things that are happening in Philadelphia and the nonprofits that are boots on the ground doing this work every single day, all of those amazing things that they are doing in our city. Because even though we're dealing with gun violence right now, I still love my city. I still live right here in Philadelphia. And,
and it's
that's
not a bad place. It's not.
And it's not a bad place.
Not a bad place. And that I really can relate to that idea of wanting to shift the focus. And I think that that's really how I came to create Be the Good podcast also, was that the media and all that we had going on, especially through COVID, was so intensely negative. And it was like, there is so much good going on out here and everybody's just missing it. We're just completely missing that people like yourself are doing what you're doing, and all your friends that you got involved, and the woman that you talked about in Chicago, like all these people are doing all this really cool, unique
Mhm.
things to do good in the world, but we're missing it because we're so caught up in the drama around us.
Yep.
And so it's interesting because I started this right before COVID hit, but it's what carried me through, honestly, was having these conversations and restoring my hope and my faith in
Mhm.
the world. But I just love that you really leaned into that and that's how this all came to be. So I know that you self-funded the earlier stages, and I can really relate to what a great challenge that is, having done it with my first feature-length film, because for those listening that really aren't privy to what this process is, it is a grueling process
Oh my
to
God. It is.
scrape together funds while keeping your creative well, trying to get your creative idea in motion and
Mhm.
just continuing to move forward. And honestly, I think, speaking of passion and purpose, if that wasn't there foundationally for you or anybody involved in the project, it really actually just takes one person having that fire in their belly for something.
Yep.
If you don't have that, you won't be able to work through all the ups and downs. I mean, it is, I can't tell you how many times I cried, and I'm sure you have too. Like,
Oh,
oh my
lots
God, like
of
it's
times
almost
I've
like you
cried.
sob the entire time. I sobbed for like 3 years straight and just kept saying, like, why did I think this was a good idea? How am I
Yes.
gonna get through this? Why
Yes.
why did I do this to myself? It is so hard. So can you tell us about what that was like for you and what kept you motivated and resilient in the process?
Oh man, it was so hard. Those tears came a lot. And the thing is that not only was I the director of the project, but I was also the producer of the project. I wore both hats. And so I never had a day to decompress because once I would have my creative locked in, then I would have to then put on my producer hat and knock out any fires that are happening, you know. And it was just it was grueling. I have to thank, you know, Sam. People that follow me on social media, they know that I call her my Sam Sam. I could not have done this without her. She was my right hand. She's my colorist in the film, but she had did everything post production for me and working with my editor Kevin. And I think that having someone that had the same passion of this project with me really helped propel me forward. Because I didn't want to let my team down that was putting so much work into this, but I also didn't want to let the people down who trusted me with their stories. You know, I had to build that trust, and they told me so many things, and I was like, I have to finish this. I have to show them, you know, I have to not even show them, I have to show them the respect by finishing the project. That's what I meant to say, you know.
Yeah.
And it was those things that just kept me going. But it was a lot of tears, it was a lot of frustration. My imposter syndrome would kick in so many times. I was like, you know, who the hell do I think I am making a feature film? You know, I only been in this game for 4 years, you know. So it was just a lot of getting my behind kicked, I
Yeah.
should say mentally.
Well, like I said, I can really appreciate it, and I know very intimately what that process is like, and it is so hard. And I felt the same way in showing up for the patients that I've been filming all
Mhm.
these years. It's like, you know, you're showing up to serve, really. You're showing up to serve. And once you commit to doing something like this and people have bought into the idea, yeah, that does keep this steady pressure on you in a good way, I think, where
Yeah.
you're like, well, now I don't want to let myself down, and I don't want to let them down either. And that keeps you moving. So you eventually got some pretty impressive celebrity investors involved, including former Philadelphia 76ers star Allen Iverson and Grammy nominated producer Mark Mims. Is that correct?
Yep, that's correct.
So what was the process like in trying to get that type of support? And then how significant was it for you when that came through?
So remember when earlier I said I feel like things came so easy because I started walking in my purpose? I didn't seek them out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the trailer, well, now I call it the sizzle. the sizzle that we had created, you know, I made that because in the middle of filming, I said to my friends, I said, okay, I want to stop filming. I want to see if I can crowdsource. I was like, because I really think that we have something special here, and I want to be able to pay my friends too, you know? And so I showed the sizzle to my film sisters, Edith and Shaquela, and they were like, oh my God, Kyrie, no, you cannot crowdsource. Like, let's us share this out and let's see if anyone just take it, like, just throw it out there on social media. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna listen. And so I put it on social media. And when I put it on social media, Mark Mims saw it on social media, and he also knew my film sister, Edith. And he said, Kyra, can I jump on a call with you? So I said, okay. So I jump on a call with him, and he's like, I know you don't know me, but please don't crowdsource. Please trust me. Please, please trust me with this project. So I was like, okay, I'll take another leap of faith, since leap of faith seemed to be my thing, right? Took a leap of faith to do my job, took a leap of faith to do this. So I was like, okay, I took a leap of faith. Mark Mims is the one that actually gave me the funding to finish my film. And through his connections is how Allen Iverson saw the sizzle. And Allen Iverson, he lended me his platform so that millions of people will be able to see this film. And that's how it happened. You know, It was just, I know it's wild, right?
That is the power of a powerful example of walking in your purpose.
Yes.
And the fact that literally the universe aligns to support your mission, because I mean, what a beautiful way for that to all play out, because really at the end of the day, your intention was so pure in just wanting to pay your friends and pay the people who helped make this happen. And then that's what comes out of it. I love it. I love that. So let's talk about the film itself. So with this film, you're highlighting the truly devastating reality of just how serious the level of gun violence is here in Philadelphia currently. In the film, you follow several Philadelphia teens who are struggling to navigate the violence in their communities as they work towards their own passions and goals. How powerful was it for you to get such an intimate glimpse into their journeys? And what was your greatest hope or intention in capturing those stories?
So for me, it was super powerful because, again, you never hear from the teens, you know? And so listening to their stories, I thought about myself growing up, you know? And I'm like, I didn't have to deal with social media, you know? I was able to play outside with my friends without worrying about being shot or killed. You know, I had programs that I could go to, like POW, the Police Athletic League, you know? So I'm listening to these stories of these kids. They don't have that. They don't have none of that, you know? And one of the stories that hit me the most was David King. When I interviewed him, he was 19 at the time. And in that year alone, that 1 year alone, he lost 5 friends, including his cousin, to gun violence. You know? And in the middle of that, he's battling going to regular high school, you know, going to high school, being a basketball player there. You know, he's battling social media, like all of these things. The car that his mom got him for his birthday, the next day it got shot up, you know, when he was walking in a house. It's like, I couldn't even fathom, you know, what these teens are going through, you know? And so that was very, very powerful for me. And, you know, I felt I didn't include any politics in this film at all, because I felt as though that it was more important to hear people's stories versus going into the whole political thing of it all, you know? Because once you put politics in something, then already you're cutting off half of your viewership, right? They're like, oh, I don't want to hear about this liberal movie, you know? So I just wanted to bring forth the stories of these teens and get the perspective of these young kids, you know? And maybe that ignites some passion and to people that are watching this and say, I want to help. I want to help out. How can we get these programs back up and running for these teens? How can we find places for these teens to go so they can be kids again? You know, and that was my whole mission for this film. And I think I answered your question, but I'm not sure because I have a bad habit of going on a tangent. So
no, you absolutely did. And I think that, again, I hate to keep drawing parallels here of what you're doing, what I'm doing, but Be the Good, that was also my purpose as well. As I was like, I'm going to, as best I can, leave politics out of it for the same reason, because it's like, if we really want to talk about like coming together and making a difference for the good or for the better, we have to come into it in a way where there isn't already those defenses up politically. And I think that was really smart of you to do that, because it leaves, and in the vein of storytelling, that's what you really want to do as a storyteller, is be able to have people just connect with what I'm sharing with you, have zero bias about it, and maybe let it move you. Hopefully let it move you, right?
Yes.
And here in Philadelphia, it was interesting when I found your project, because I thought to myself immediately, wow, that's something has been on my mind a lot, is the teens, because everybody, especially here in the Philadelphia area, and I'm sure it happens in many inner city communities where there's gun violence, everybody wants to talk about the problem. You know, it's just, there's this problem, or, you know, it's a bad place, it's a bad city, and look at all these bad things that happen. But nobody really wants to talk about, well, then what are we going to do about it? Like, what are the solutions, you know, of you, the person who's saying it's a terrible place? Okay, if you think that, or you think, and there are bad things going on, obviously gun violence is a huge issue, then what are we going to do about it? And that's what I love, that you are coming at it from that angle of like, here's the issue, see it intimately portrayed in these stories, and then how can we find solutions for these kids? They are kids, still just trying to live their life, like, and they are being met with a barrage of bullets on a daily basis. Like,
exactly. And like all of the kids that I like all the teens that I feature, not all of them have been affected by gun violence personally, you know, but for example, I get the perspective of Winter. You know, she hasn't lost anyone from gun violence, but she talks about her experience witnessing her friends lose their friends from gun violence and how that affects her mentally, you know.
And so just the element of them knowing that it's around, right? Exactly. That this is the world I'm living in. Even if it's not happening to me personally, it's happening all around me to people I care about, and what that does as a ripple effect mentally to everybody. And that actually leads me to my next question, because you also involved the mothers, correct? And so I just can only imagine how different that was for you. Like, what was the difference, and what was that like for you to get their perspective as seen through the mother's eyes?
I cried a lot.
Yeah.
During those interviews. I cried a lot. That was really, really tough for me, because with the doc, you know, I highlight my cousin Gary. You know, he has Shoot Basketballs Not People, and his mission is to keep the kids off the street, right? But when I was turning this into a feature, I said to myself, okay, we got Gary that's trying to keep the kids off the street, but I need a nonprofit that's working with the aftermath. What about, you know, the kids that couldn't be saved? You know, how are the parents dealing with that? And that's how I found Mothers in Charge, with the founder, Dr. Dorothy, who she started the organization 20 years ago because she lost her own son to gun violence over a parking dispute. And he had just graduated from college, you know, and she thought that he was safe because he was 24 years old. And that same year, over a parking dispute, you know. And so listening to these stories, it just, when I would come home, it was hard for me to like mentally come back, you know, because just listening and you're editing and you're like, you want to make sure you're respectful to these mothers' stories, and then it messes with your sight because you're like, you don't want to cut too much because you don't want to feel like no part of their story matters, you know. It was tough. I mean, I even have a mother that's an immigrant that came from Africa to Philadelphia, and her story raising her son in Philadelphia, you know, it's just, I think the mother stories is really going to get people. And I'm trying not to say too much because I don't want to give too much away, but it just seeing it from a mother's lens, it made me afraid to become a mother, you know, because I can't imagine losing a child, you know, because they always say that we're supposed to bury our parents, not the other way around, you know. So it was tough. It was tough.
It sounds like overall such a powerful film. And you say that you started this movie to create change in your city. And with this film and the support of your entire team, you're hopeful for the future of Philly. So, can you speak to your hope for this film moving forward and for your hope of the city of Philadelphia?
Um, you know, I hope that this inspires people to create change in our city. And I hope it inspires people to donate to the smaller nonprofits in Philly. You know, we have these big, huge nonprofits, but they're not doing programs every day for these kids. You know, Mothers in Charge, I see them, they have programs every single day for not only the mothers, but also these teens. You know, Shoe Basketball Not People, he has his basketball program. Yeah, Philly, that's in West Philadelphia, they have a program for kids where they're even helping these kids get birth certificates so that way they can get jobs. Something that you don't even think of, like you need your parent to get a birth certificate, but if your parent's not around, how can you get a birth certificate? So how can you get a job as a teen, you know? So I'm seeing all of these programs, boots on the ground, but they're not getting the funding that they need because that funding is going to these bigger organizations, you know? So I'm praying that this inspires people to donate to those smaller nonprofits. And I hope that it inspires people to, again, allow kids to be kids again. Allow kids to be kids again, you know, like we had the privilege of being, you know. And I'm not saying that my like me growing up was perfect, you know, of course there was still some violence, you know, but it was not like it was today. And the thing is that when I started filming this, I didn't know that we were going to be breaking records from back in the 80s, you know? I didn't realize that we would be breaking records left and right. Last year, we went to close to 600 murders in Philadelphia. I believe it was 558. Don't quote me on that, but I believe it was like 558 murders last year. And think about it. That's not even the murders that, you know, the police might not have caught. That's not even the shootings of the people that survived those shootings, you know? This year, I believe we were at 542 murders, you know? So it's like, I just pray that this just inspires change. And I pray that people realize that it's a Black female filmmaker that lives right here in Philadelphia. You know, I'm in the middle of this. I'm in the middle of this. You know, I feel like I'm in a prison cell in my own city where I'm afraid to go out at night, you know? So that's what I pray that it does.
And you're inspiring all of us to just take one step forward towards that change that everybody wants to see, especially those of us that live in this area. And I really am appreciative of you highlighting those smaller nonprofits because, you know, it's that whole concept of like, think globally, act locally. Like if you don't support these smaller groups, these people that are really putting programs in place that will actively help these young people and hopefully shift the culture in the young people's world for the positive, that's where real change happens, right? And it doesn't mean that these bigger organizations don't serve their purpose or that they don't help. But if you really want to make a direct impact towards this particular issue, and especially here in the Philadelphia area, then it's important that we highlight those nonprofits. So I'm actually going to make sure that after we're done here, I'll get any links that I could put in the show notes so people can access the nonprofits that you would suggest they support.
Awesome.
Because that, at the end of the day, is also what this platform is for. is to highlight the need and direct people towards where to help, where and how to help support. And again, I think that oftentimes people just get caught in the conversation of Philadelphia's got this horrible problem, and let's just talk about it. Let's just talk about how bad it is. Well, then, but like if it bothers you that much, and it should bother all of us, then do something towards being a part of the solution, right?
Exactly.
Instead of just waiting for it to go away, because it's not going to go away.
It's not going to go away.
No. And that's, I have the greatest hopes for you and for this project, because it is something like this that will absolutely bring necessary attention and support to make that change happen.
And that's why I tell people, like, I didn't expect all of this. I didn't expect Allen Iverson or Mark Mims. I just wanted to make a film to spread awareness, you know, about what's going on in my city. I'm not in the business of exploiting these nonprofits or anything like that. So that's why even at the end of my film, I have their websites and their links so that people can donate to these nonprofits. That is my goal here, just to spread awareness to what's going on in my city.
It's fantastic. And when will the film be available, or where will the film be available? Or are we not there yet?
Earl, I know that will be available early spring.
Okay.
I just don't know where the home will be at yet.
Okay, that's fine. And I will be sure to follow up with you when the time comes and make sure that I share that with everybody, so we can make sure we get our eyes on this film. And I have a couple questions for you before we wrap up here that are just questions I like to ask guests when they're on the podcast. We talk a lot about the topics of compassion and community on this podcast. So can you tell us what you think the importance of community is, especially in these inner city areas where gun violence is so prevalent?
So the thing is that with Philly, and that's how you know that the problem is getting worse, is that the gun violence isn't just happening in the inner city anymore. It's happening everywhere. Think about, we had the shooting on South Street. We had a shooting in Old City. We had a shooting where people are jogging on Kelly Drive all the time, a shooting there. I just came back from LA 2 weeks ago. I live in a pretty good neighborhood in Philly. I live in West Germantown, right near Lincoln Drive. That same day that I came back, there in broad daylight, there was a shooting on my corner of my block. There was a shooting a few months ago this summer where my grandmother was on her porch, where she's lived at since before I was even thought of, since my mom was a kid. She's on her porch, having a cup of coffee, talking to her neighbor, and a shooting happens 2 doors away from my grandmother, who's 82 years old. You know, like it's happening everywhere now, you know? And so with the community, I'm blessed that in the community that I'm at in Germantown and Uptown, West Oak Lane, like we have been banding together the best that we can to protect these kids and do the programs that we can do, you know, just like with Gary, with Shoot Basketball's Not People, with me as a filmmaker, you know, when people reach out to me to teach kids or mentor kids with filmmaking, I'm always the first one in line doing that. So we're just trying to utilize our gifts and utilize our love for our community to help keep these kids off the street, you know, because we don't want no more of these babies dying to gun violence. And again, I know I keep saying it. I just want kids to be able to be kids again.
Yeah, it's a very important message. And I think that it ties into the fact of what you were talking about with seeing it through the mother's eyes, like seeing these. Oh,
sorry. It's just like,
sorry. It is. It's so heavy. And like you're explaining, you're in it, and it's a community where you wouldn't expect it. And it's hitting. So it's impacting so many people's lives.
Kids can't even go on playgrounds anymore, you know, like, because they're afraid that there's a shooting that's going to happen.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's so messed up, you know, like these kids have to be adults. How fair is that to them? It's not fair at all, you know? Sorry.
No, it's not. And you're absolutely right. And that is why something needs to be done. And everybody in this entire community and the surrounding community should have a part in doing something about it.
Think about right in the shooting that had it happen right in what's that area called? Roxborough.
Roxbury, yeah.
Those
It was
kids
it
are
was
playing
a football team.
football.
I know. That is, yeah, for those listening that aren't from around here, that was some, a group of kids came to after a football practice and just started shooting. And actually, yeah, the kid who passed away was initially from this neighborhood where I live.
See?
He had just switched schools and he was killed. And that should not have to happen. None of these
Oh,
kids should have to be worried. And as a mother, I mean, I have 3 kids myself. My son, my oldest is 9. I mean, especially when that football situation happened, that hit me so hard. It's like
right.
he could be just doing his own thing, playing football with his friends, and somebody randomly gets shot and killed.
Exactly.
That is
It's
a
frightening.
problem. That is a big problem for all
Yeah.
of us, and we should all care about doing something about it. So I am definitely going to link all these nonprofits and make sure that I keep in touch with you so that we link up around the release when the film is actually out there. And I also want to encourage listeners to follow along with you and your process and what you got going on, because I've only been I literally found out about you like 2 weeks ago,
Yeah.
and I've been following you and I'm super inspired. I'm just super inspired by all that you got going on. And I love that you are sometimes saying on your social media, like, keep going, Knox. Like,
Keep going.
I love that, because it's like at the end of the day, you stop and look back and you're like, wow, 4 years ago, I had a totally different job, right?
Yep.
I wasn't doing anything like this. And then look at where you've come. I mean, not even just the stories you've been able to tell and what a powerful experience I'm sure it's been for you, but like you're also winning awards and you're involved with the Philadelphia Eagles and this like really important gun violence campaign that's happening.
Yeah.
I'm so happy for you that
Thank you.
you are following your heart, your purpose, your passion, and that all of us will benefit from that. And that really is a big part of this podcast too, is just encouraging people to follow that little tug on your heart to do something, to get involved in your community or do something creative that will help somebody else. Don't ignore that little or big pull on your heart to do something, because it is deeply rewarding. It is deeply fulfilling. And at the end of our lives, I think what we're going to look back on is these moments and say, yeah, that's what I'm most proud of. I'm proud that I wasn't too scared to take that leap. I wasn't too scared to try to speak up for something and for a community that needed somebody to speak up.
Yep, exactly.
And I think that's exactly what you're doing right now. And that's why you are attracting to yourself the right people, the right circumstances to make it come to life, because you've got that energy behind you.
Yeah,
So,
and that's what I respect about the Eagles. This is my second year working with them on a campaign for gun violence. And this time they even added financial literacy in Black communities. And what I respect about them is that we're not just doing a pretty campaign and a pretty commercial or anything like that. They actually donated money to these nonprofits, to the smaller nonprofits in Philadelphia, and they put their money where their mouth is. And that's why I love working with the Philadelphia Eagles, because you can tell they really care.
yeah. And that PSA that you did was powerful.
Thank you. I can't wait till you see the new one that's about to come out next week.
Oh, there is? I didn't know that.
Yes, that's why I'm tired, because this week we filmed the commercial. So I cannot wait for everyone to see it, the commercial coming out.
I'm excited. Yeah. I'm excited to see that. And I am excited for all the things, all the good that is going to come out of your efforts. I know it. I can feel it. And I just can't thank you enough for taking the time to be here with us today. So before we hop off, just tell us where we can follow you, how we can get involved with following you and the film on social media.
My Instagram is basically my name, Kyra Knox _ because someone else has my name.
How dare they?
And that's my social media on Twitter and on Instagram. Yeah. And then for the film, this Instagram page is Bad Things Philly Film. And that's where you can really follow about the film's journey. So yeah,
Great.
That's where it's
I will be sure to link those things as well. And I encourage everyone to follow along, to get involved, to make a donation to these smaller nonprofits, and to help support the amazing work you're doing. So thank you again for taking the time to be here today.
Thank you for having me. It was an honor. Seriously. Thank you.